The night it all started, I didn't expect anything unusual. It was just a housewarming party in Dallas. One of those gatherings where you know half the faces, pretend to know the other half, and spend most of the evening balancing a drink in your hand while making small talk that doesn't mean a thing. Megan and I had been invited by one of her college friends who had just bought a new place in Uptown. She insisted we go because everyone would be there. So there we were. Laughter spilling out into the warm Texas night. Music low enough not to anger the neighbors but loud enough to drown out the shallow conversations. People were clustered in circles, glasses raised, making inside jokes I didn't understand. Megan was in her element, glowing in the center of it all, like she always was. She thrived on attention, on being seen, on being the person everyone gravitated toward. I stood a few steps away, half listening to a story about someone's new Tesla, when I caught it. A small, fleeting flash of light from Megan's wrist. She had gotten a new smartwatch not long ago, one of those sleek models she said she needed for fitness tracking. I didn't think much of it until that moment. The screen lit up, and for a fraction of a second, I saw the name. It was him, her ex, the one she swore she'd cut out of her life years ago. The message itself was simple, almost clinical. A hotel room number and a door code. That was it. No hello. No explanation, just coordinates to a meeting place. Like it wasn't the first time. Like it didn't need context. I froze, my drink halfway to my lips. My ears rang, and the rest of the party blurred into background noise. My mind scrambled for reasons, innocent ones. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe it was some mix-up, a wrong number, or a prank. But deep down, I already knew. You don't send a married woman a hotel door code by mistake. Before I could react, before I could even steady my breathing, Megan did something that told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. She got to her feet, lifted her glass, and called for attention. "Everyone," she said with a wide smile. "I want to make a toast." The chatter died down. All eyes turned to her, as if the spotlight belonged to her by default. She started with the usual polite words. Congratulations to the host, how proud she was of her friend, the beauty of the new house. Then, almost casually, she pivoted. And of course, I have to thank my wonderful husband, Mark, for being here tonight. He's always dependable. Almost like, she laughed, pausing for effect. Well, almost like my ex, who could fix anything with his hands. Remember how he rebuilt that old Mustang? God, those were the days. The room broke into laughter. A wave of it. It rolled over me like a tide. People clinked glasses. Some gave her playful nudges. Others glanced at me with a mix of amusement and pity. She smiled the whole time as if comparing me to another man, her ex of all people, was the most natural thing in the world. I forced a thin smile, nodding like I could take a joke. Inside, though, I was hollowing out. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped. That laugh wasn't harmless. It was a knife wrapped in charm. And maybe that was her real talent, making cruelty sound like comedy. I didn't say anything. I didn't make a scene, didn't challenge her. What good would it have done? If I'd protested, it would have been brushed off as me being too sensitive. If I'd asked about the message on her watch, she would have spun a story, and everyone in that room would have believed her because she was Megan, the lively, charismatic one. So instead, I let the glass slip from my hand back onto the table. I excused myself with a quiet smile and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. Maybe they thought I just needed air. Maybe they didn't care. But as I stepped out into the warm Dallas night, the laughter still echoing behind me, I knew I just witnessed the first crack in the facade of my marriage. That notification, that toast, that cruel laughter, it wasn't just a slip. It was a message. And though she thought she had deflected attention away from the watch by humiliating me in front of friends, she'd actually done the opposite. She had confirmed my worst suspicion. Something was happening, and it was bigger than a joke. I walked away silently, and in that silence, something inside me shifted. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I didn't ask her why. I just left. And leaving without a word, without giving her the fight she expected, was the first move in a game she didn't even realize had already beg***n. On the drive home that night, Silence filled the car more than any song on the radio could. The streetlights of Dallas slid across my windshield, breaking the darkness into fragments, but none of it settled me. My mind was chewing itself raw. That notification, the hotel code, and her cruel little toast. The way she had laughed so easily while throwing me under the bus. It replayed on a loop, and with every repetition, the dots started connecting. And suddenly, all the strange fragments of the past few months lit up like neon signs. At first, they had been small things I tried to ignore. Fitness trips with her coworkers, spinning classes, yoga weekends, or so she said. I believed her because that's what you do when you want to protect the person you love from suspicion. But then I started noticing little receipts left behind in her purse or in the glove compartment. Not from gyms or studios, from bars. Craft cocktail places with names that didn't exactly scream health and wellness. Then came the lingerie. I found a shopping bag shoved into the back of her closet. Tissue paper crumpled around lace that was both expensive and revealing. It wasn't the purchase itself that unsettled me. It was how she paid. Cash. Megan never used cash. She lived on her credit card rewards, loved bragging about how many airline miles she was racking up. So why hide this? Why stuff the receipt deep into her coat pocket like it was contraband? The worst was the second SIM card. I found the wrapper wedged in the side pocket of her car one Saturday morning when I went to refill the windshield fluid. It was the kind of thing you wouldn't stumble across unless you were looking for a rag and found a secret instead. A new SIM, prepaid, with no paper trail. My heart dropped the second I realized what it meant. 2 numbers. 2 lives. But that wasn't the only way she was hiding. Her location sharing. Once something we used casually when she drove late at night, suddenly glitched. At first, she claimed it was her phone's update messing up the settings. Then, she said she needed privacy. Privacy from me, her husband of 10 years. The explanation was flimsy, but I let it slide, telling myself I was being paranoid. And then came the taxis. Repeated rides, every Friday, always ending at the same street. A cluster of mid-rise apartments and a small boutique hotel. When I asked her about them, she called them corporate events and rolled her eyes at my skepticism. But how many companies hold weekly parties at the same address? The evidence kept building, but Megan had a way of disarming suspicion with her tone. She'd laugh off my concerns, turn them into jokes, or worse, twist them back on me. You're overthinking things, she'd say. Why are you acting jealous? Don't you trust me? Those words dug under my skin until I started doubting myself more than I doubted her. But then came the daycare pickup. Out of nowhere, an unfamiliar name appeared on our daughter's approved list. A family friend I had never met. Megan slipped it into casual conversation one morning as if she were reminding me to buy milk. Something about it didn't add up. Who was this man, and why was he suddenly trusted with our child? And the boutique hotel receipts. They were the nail in the coffin. Twice, tucked into her coat pocket, I found the same logo. Once for a standard room, once for a deluxe experience package with late checkout. Both times paid under her name, both times dated on Fridays she claimed were work-related. Even friends started dropping hints in ways they thought were harmless. Jokes about Megan's newfound freedom. Laughter about how she was always out and about. At the time, I forced myself to smile with them, to pretend their words weren't carrying hidden meaning. But that night, driving home from the party, those jokes burned in my ears. Every piece of the puzzle, scattered across months, suddenly aligned into a picture I didn't want to see. Megan wasn't just distracted. She wasn't just tired from work. She wasn't just blowing off steam with friends. She was living another life, and I was the idiot standing at the edge of it, watching her slip further away, thinking it was all just stress or coincidence. The truth was sitting in the passenger seat with me that night. Not in flesh, but in silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than words ever could. I kept my eyes on the road, but inside I was screaming. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It wasn't insecurity. It was obvious. The puzzle wasn't missing pieces. The puzzle was finished. And the picture it showed was betrayal. By the time I got home that night, suspicion had hardened into something else. resolve. I had spent weeks, maybe months, brushing off my gut instincts, telling myself I was paranoid, that Megan was just stressed, that marriage always had its rough patches. But now the mask was slipping, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed proof, something undeniable, something that would silence her deflections and my own doubts in the same breath. The house was dark when I walked in. Megan was still at the party, probably basking in the attention, laughing about the toast she thought had been harmless. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at the glow of the family iPad. We had set it up months earlier so our daughter could watch cartoons and Megan could stream workout apps. What she didn't realize, or maybe what she forgot, was that the iPad synced automatically to the family cloud. Backups, messages, photos, everything. With trembling hands, I unlocked the device and started digging. At first, the folders were mundane recipes, playlists, old vacation pictures. But tucked inside the backups, I found her messages. My chest tightened as I scrolled through names. Coworkers, family, friends. Then, like a rotten fruit hidden in the bottom of the basket, I saw it. His name, her ex. I opened the thread. The first few lines were innocent enough. Catching up. Old memories. How have you been? Crazy to think it's been years. But the casual tone quickly shifted. Meeting times. Hotel addresses. A picture of a key card resting on a nightstand. My stomach flipped as I saw the same digits I'd glimpsed on her smartwatch notification. The door code. Repeated, sent more than once, as if it had become their private signal. Then came the photos. Selfies. Not the kind you post online, not the kind you show friends. Megan in a mirrored hotel room, dressed in lingerie I didn't recognize. Her phone angled just so to capture both her reflection and the unfamiliar backdrop. My pulse hammered in my ears. I recognized the decor. It matched a promotional brochure I'd seen months ago for a boutique hotel downtown. The same one whose receipts I had found crumpled in her coat pocket. The digital trail only grew heavier. Email confirmations. Digital receipts tied to her account, showing two-person bookings with late checkout. Taxi records synced from ride-hailing apps, all leading directly to that same hotel. Patterns repeating like clockwork. Fridays, always ending in that building. And then, a message that made my breath catch. Doors open. Same code. Can't wait. No more doubt. No room for excuses. It was all there, laid out in front of me like a case file. The backup had handed me everything. Times, places, faces. Enough to erase the faintest shadow of denial. For a long time, I just sat there. The iPad heavy in my hands, the kitchen clock ticking louder with every second. I thought about confronting her immediately, about driving back to the party and slamming the device down in front of her, forcing her to admit the truth. But then another thought took hold, colder, sharper. Why give her the drama she wanted? Why feed her the conflict she thrived on? No, I would be calm. I would be precise. So I started archiving everything. *TS. Email exports. Ride logs. I built a folder, tucked neatly into a secure drive, labeled with a name only I would understand. Each file was a nail in the coffin of the lies she had built. When I was finished, I set the iPad down and leaned back in my chair. My hands were shaking, my throat dry, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. There was no doubt left. Megan was unfaithful. Not in theory, not in suspicion, not in some hazy paranoia of mine, but in fact. The evidence was undeniable, preserved in black and white, in pixels and timestamps. And as painful as it was, there was a strange relief in that certainty. The puzzle was solved. The marriage, though, was finished. The morning after I uncovered everything, Megan breezed through the kitchen as if nothing had shifted in the air. She hummed while pouring coffee, her smartwatch flashing on her wrist, the same one that had betrayed her. She kissed our daughter's forehead, smiled at me like any other day, and asked if I'd remembered to take out the trash. Her performance was flawless, but I could see it now for what it was, a mask. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to rip it off. I didn't want a screaming match, or tears, or apologies rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror. I wanted something else. Something sharper. Silence. precision, strategy. Instead of confronting her, I spent my days building a plan. Every evening, once Megan was asleep, I sat at the desk in my office, compiling evidence into neat digital folders. Chats, *TS, ride histories, booking receipts, timestamps that lined up too perfectly with her corporate events. I archived it all like a prosecutor building an airtight case. Next came the lawyer. I scheduled the consultation quietly, slipping out during lunch breaks, telling Megan I was running errands. The attorney listened without flinching, her pen scratching across a yellow pad as I laid out the digital proof. She didn't promise vengeance. She promised structure. We'll separate finances. We'll secure custody. We'll protect your assets. Her voice was calm, clinical, the way mine had become. Following her advice, I restructured everything. I shifted funds out of our joint account into one solely under my name. I rerouted all subscriptions, utilities, and mail into my own control. Megan still thought she was living in the life she had built with me, but piece by piece, I was cutting her out of it. It wasn't rage that guided me, it was discipline. Each move I made was deliberate, as though I were dismantling a house brick by brick while the other occupants slept inside. At home, my behavior shifted too. I stopped feeding the sparks she loved to ignite. Her comments, sharp, mocking, sometimes casually cruel, were met with calm silence. Her little tests to bait me into jealousy fell flat. I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't argue. I didn't even ask where she had been when she stumbled in late on Fridays, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers and whiskey that wasn't ordered at a gym. I simply nodded, set my alarm, and went to bed. This quiet unnerved her. Megan thrived on drama, on feeling like she was the center of a storm. Without my reactions, she looked restless, even irritated. Sometimes she'd throw out small provocations, snide remarks about how other men took care of their wives better, exaggerated sighs about my long work hours. But when all she got was calm acknowledgement, no spark to feed on, she withdrew. Meanwhile, I redirected my energy into myself. I dusted off the weights in the garage and returned to training. Early mornings before sunrise, sweat dripping into the silence while Megan slept. I poured myself into professional growth too, taking on projects at work that I used to decline. The more focused I became on myself, the less her chaos had room to consume me. To her, it probably looked like distance, maybe indifference. To me, it was control. Friends noticed the change. They asked if everything was all right, if Megan and I were working through things. I gave them the same calm response. We're fine. No explanations, no drama. Let her be the one whose behavior drew whispers. I would remain steady, unshaken. Evenings grew colder between us, but not in the way she expected. She tried once or twice to bait me into a fight, accusing me of being distracted, of not paying her enough attention. I only smiled faintly and told her I was focusing on work. Her frustration simmered beneath the surface, visible in the way she clenched her jaw, the way her laugh at parties grew louder, almost manic. I gave her nothing to push against, and in that nothingness I was winning. The strange, how the absence of noise can be louder than shouting. My silence became a mirror she couldn't stand to look into. She was used to controlling the narrative, to twisting arguments until I doubted myself. But without conflict, there was no story left to tell. Only her unraveling, and me preparing. Each day I inched closer to the inevitable confrontation, but on my terms. The documents stacked neatly in my folder. The accounts sat secured under my name. My lawyer was one phone call away from filing the papers. All the while, Megan laughed, toasted, and hummed through her days, unaware that the life she thought she was balancing, me at home, him in hotels, was already slipping out of her hands. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to collapse. I was going to walk away with precision, leaving her to discover too late that the silence she dismissed was the sound of her downfall being built. Weeks passed in that strange limbo. Megan carried on with her late nights, her work events, her carefully crafted lies. To her, everything probably felt stable again. No fights, no accusations, no husband demanding explanations she couldn't convincingly provide. She must have thought she had pulled off the balancing act. What she didn't realize was that silence doesn't mean safety. My quiet wasn't forgiveness. It was preparation. The moment came on a Sunday evening. The kind of evening meant for rest, where the smell of dinner should fill the house, where couples curl up on couches and children play with toys on the rug. Instead, the house felt like a stage awaiting its final act. Megan had just come home from another team-building weekend. She was cheerful, chatty, trying too hard. She poured herself a glass of wine and started talking about how her company might be expanding. I let her speak, nodded when appropriate, but my hands were steady on the folder I'd placed on the table. When she finally paused, I slid it toward her. "What's this?" she asked, a faint laugh on her lips, though I saw her eyes flicker with unease. "Evidence," I said evenly. She blinked. "Evidence of what?" "Of where you've been, of who you've been with, of what you've done to this marriage." Her laugh was sharper this time, forced. "Mark, come on. Don't be dramatic." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the folder and laid out the contents one by one. **TS of chats. Photos of hotel receipts. Taxi logs ending at the same address week after week. A printout of the mirrored selfie she'd thought was private. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. The color drained from her face. "Mark, this isn't. Don't insult me by denying it." My voice was steady, almost detached. "This is the truth. It's all here. You don't get to twist it. You don't get to lie your way out of this." She sat back in her chair, lips parted, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "I can explain." "You don't need to," I replied. "I'm not here for explanations. I'm here to tell you what happens next." I handed her another paper, a timeline. Dates, deadlines, financial arrangements already shifted out of her control. A clear line separating her life from mine. "I've spoken with an attorney," I said. "The finances are separated. Your access to our joint accounts has been removed. The mortgage is in my name alone now. You'll have time to make arrangements, but this house will no longer be yours. You'll need to move out by the end of the month." Her mouth fell open. "You're kicking me out?" "I'm separating us. Permanently." She shook her head, disbelief clouding her face. "Mark, wait please. This isn't what you think. It was just. Don't." I cut her off. "Don't diminish it. Don't call it a mistake. Don't try to wrap betrayal in softer words. You made a choice. Repeatedly. This is the consequence." Tears welled in her eyes, but they looked hollow. Not grief, not guilt, fear. Fear of losing the stability she had taken for granted. "Can't we talk about this?" she whispered. "We can go to therapy, we can." I shook my head. "I'm not angry, Megan. Not anymore. Anger gives you power, and I won't hand you that. What I am is done. Done with the lies. Done with the humiliation. Done with the marriage you decided wasn't enough." She stared at me, lips trembling. For once, she had no rehearsed lines, no cutting remark, no laugh to deflect with. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. Finally, she reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. "Don't," I said quietly. "You don't get to touch me like we're still us." Her tears spilled over then, but they didn't move me. I had prepared too thoroughly for this moment, rehearsed it in my mind 100 times. There was no room left for pity. "This isn't fair," she choked out. "Neither was betraying me," I answered. I stood, gathered the papers back into the folder, and left them in front of her. "These are copies. Keep them. They'll remind you why this ended." She looked smaller then, deflated, like a balloon that had floated high on attention, only to pop when faced with reality. I walked away from the table, my steps steady. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing, whispering fragments of excuses, but I didn't turn back. This wasn't about anger anymore. It was about closure, about reclaiming the dignity she had tried to strip from me with her toast, with her lies, with her double life. I had given her laughter in front of friends once. Tonight, I gave her silence, precision, and inevitability. The separation wasn't a choice for her to negotiate. It was already decided,